Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special webinar on NSE's Himalayan scam. The webinar is part of the BusinessLine knowledge series that we have been holding for the last almost 2 years now on various issues of public importance and issues that are in the news. You would all agree that the news of the last 1 week has been the unseemly happenings at the National Stock Exchange between 2012 and 2016. The story was outed by none other than BusinessLine itself. And we have with us in the panel the person who wrote about that story, who broke the story first in BusinessLine. The NSE scam, as you all know, is about a CEO who took orders from apparently so-called Himalayan yogi, whose existence is in doubt, and whether this is indeed a yogi or is this someone masquerading as a yogi. These are things which investigations have to bring forth. But this CEO was apparently taking instructions from this yogi on senior level appointments. She even went ahead and appointed a person as chief operating officer at a very fancy salary who had no experience whatsoever in the stock exchange business or in the stock markets. And she was regularly said to have passed on information about the stock exchange's functioning, its financial statements, its strategies, its projections, its plans. Everything that is confidential in a business was being passed on to this person who is supposedly an outsider at this point in time. So this is the crux of the whole story. I mean, there's much more to this, which we'll be discussing, which we will unravel over the course of the next 1 hour. We have with us a very eminent panel, a very experienced panel led by Mr. M. Damodaran. He doesn't need any introduction. Mr. Damodaran is a former chairman of the Securities and Exchange Board of India. He's right now the chairperson of Excellence Enablers. We have Mr. Jayan Gupta, another person who worked in the SEBI. He was executive director in SEBI between 2009 and 2011. He's the founder and chairperson of Stakeholder Empowerment Services, a shareholder proxy advisory firm. We have Lokeshwari, my senior colleague. She has written extensively on the co-location scam in the NSE, and she has several insights into what happened in that period when the scam broke. We also have, finally, Alaksha, the star of this whole show, who broke the story for us, who has been following it up diligently, and who has written extensively on the stock markets and on the NSE itself. And Palak has also written a book on the scam, which was published a year and a half ago. So this is, in sum, the panel that's going to discuss the issue thread back today. So I will be discussing with each one of these esteemed panelists, and eventually, if time permits, we will have questions from the audience. That's subject to time being available. So please do send in your questions. Let it be sharp. We don't want comments. And please don't ask us who is the yogi, because we don't know. So let us not get into the yogi business. You can talk about everything else. So I will start without further ado with Mr. Damodaran. Mr. Damodaran, you wrote a wonderful op-ed piece for us, which was published on Saturday, in which I thought the crux line was, let me try and read it out for the benefit of our viewers. The crux line was, to understand the nature of the NSE problem, it is necessary to focus on the dramatis personae and their errors and omissions. Looking for a Himalayan yogi whose existence is itself in doubt can be a weapon of mass distraction. Now, that's a nice turn of phrase, but can you tell us what you think of this whole scam? Is it a scam of corporate governance? Is it a corporate governance failure, which it is indeed, but has this led to a further fraud, or is it just a corporate governance failure?
Thank you for having me on this panel. Let me respond to your last question first, because I think that is the critical question. Is this a corporate governance failure? Yes, it is. It is a failure on multiple fronts. All of it relate to corporate governance. even if only one or two of those had taken place, they could still have been a massive corporate governance failure. And I think what we need to do is to first of all remember at this point of time that what we're talking about is not just a systemically important institution, but one that is right at the center of India's securities markets, is the largest exchange when it comes to depositories, has produced large number of interesting products. And to summarize all of that is in some sense the barometer with reference to which the Indian economy can be judged. So we're talking about that kind of an institution. And clearly to see that it performs well, that it does not have any practices that militate against public interest, it is necessary to look at who are the people, what did they do, what did they not do, why they did what they did or did not do. And most importantly, what are the takeaways from that? Because there is an old saying which says, no man, and I want to change the context to an institution, no institution is entirely useless. The worst of them can serve as a horrible example. So if you recognize that truth, that there are learnings everywhere, clearly these are failures from which we need to learn. The takeaways are important, and we have to see that something of this nature, of this magnitude, does not surface in this institution or in any other institution, because that could be very destabilizing for the entire securities market and at one level removed even the economy. That I thought was what we need to focus on. You're absolutely right. Looking for the Himalayan yogi is a pursuit we can leave to investigative agencies. I believe they have the skill sets to do this. I personally can't claim to have skill sets. I don't know whether any of your panelists have skill sets matching that of the investigative agencies who are willing to go and figure out who this character is, if such a character exists. So I think what's important is what are the takeaways for us from this, and how do we ensure that the credibility, the reputation, the standing of NSE is restored to what it was before all of this happened. That, I believe, ought to inform our conversation.
Well, that's one way to look at the whole issue, look forward and see what the learnings are, is what you're saying. But aren't you shocked at some of the revelations that come out in terms of corporate governance? Board meetings where important items such as appointment of COO or dismissal of COO were not on the agenda, and they were taken up, A, and B, there was no minutes of any of these conversations, any of these meetings. Now, remember that this board also has PIDs, public interest directors, people of eminence, people of well-known qualifications and experience. And, how did these things pass through the board? If you look at some of the names that were there, they are icons, SD Malegam, right? And, Justice Sri Krishna in the first board, which was dissolved later. In the new board, you had people like Dinesh Kanabar, Mohandas Pai, all of them people you would think know what this business is all about and how to practice in a board. Now, how did this pass them? Why do you think this was a lapse by these people, or were they forced to look beyond these lapses despite knowing that it was a lapse?
Well, let me address the first part of your question. Was I shocked? I will borrow an expression that one of my former bosses used several decades ago. He said, I'm disagreeably shocked at what happened. And I thought nothing better explains it. The element of shock was huge. But never expected. There are bits and pieces coming out earlier There have been transgressions earlier, but something of this kind, and just get back to what the origin of this is. SEBI was looking at co-location scam. All of these are, discoveries, if one can call it that, arising out of that. I think later in the conversation, Lokeshwari, who has dealt with this in considerable detail and whose columns I read very diligently, I suppose she will shed some light on what this is. The real issue is you ask whether lapses, much more than lapses. Lapse is a very mild word. Lapses can happen everywhere, all manner of lapses. This is much worse. You are expected to know what is happening in the company on whose board you sit. You are expected to know that. One of your responsibilities is to ensure that the adequacy and timeliness of information that flows to the board is acceptable. If no information flows to the board, if much less than what you need for decision making flows to the board, clearly you are a board with suboptimal performance. And packing a board with persons who have distinguished themselves in the past is no guarantee that a board will function well. There is in corporate governance literature an expression, flower vase directors. Now, who are flower vase directors? These are people that grace boardrooms. These are very good names from the past. And I think the warning of the mutual fund industry must be kept in mind that past performance is no guarantee of future. You must get people who can perform in your board. They might have performed in a sports field, maybe in a theater of war. They could have performed anywhere. But will they perform in your board? What are your expectations? And public interest directors clearly didn't do what was expected of them. I was reading that portion of the order, and I don't know whether it's a very long order, but if I can lay hands on it, I will most certainly read it out to you. What SEBI's expectations were when they put in place this business of public interest directors, because even the name clearly indicates the expectation. You're a public interest director. You're not a private interest director. Right. You're not a director who acts on behalf of individuals, no matter however highly placed they are. Certainly, your job as a board is to challenge management, to question management, to get the best out of management. It cannot be, and I've said this earlier, you cannot have peaceful coexistence between a board and management. This seems to have been a situation of complete peaceful existence. Ask me no questions and I will tell you no lies. You can't have a board functioning on that principle. That just doesn't work. And why just the board? You look at several other people who had specific tasks that were assigned to them in terms of the governance system, in terms of the laws, in terms of regulation. Did they measure up? They too did not measure up. Look at SEBI. It sends letters to a regulated entity. Nothing comes. You send reminders. Nothing comes. It's almost as if you are pleading for information. And this board, which ought to have kept itself informed of what SEBI was asking, should have ensured that the information went to SEBI. It didn't happen. So there are multiple failures in a 1-hour program. I don't know how many of these you're going to touch, but let me make one summary observation. It is time to revisit the controls, the processes, the responsibilities, the checks and balances, and to see whether all of them are in place. If they're not in place, we could see part 2 of something similar happening in the not too distant future. Remember, these are all very bright individuals who man these positions. And if you don't watch out, the temptations are huge. There are several things that you need to see, and I don't want to take up the time of the other panelists. I'm sure they will have very important contributions to.
Thank you, Mr. Damodaran. On that note, you've touched a very important point on SEBI. I'll go to Mr. Gupta on, has SEBI proved equal to the task of investigating this whole scam, the co-location scam, and what we now call as the Himalayan yogi scam? As Mr. Damodaran said, multiple requests, multiple emails I counted through the order when SEBI asked for a particular information on the appointment of Mr. Anand Subramaniam as COO. There are 5 emails sent in a span of 6 months, 6 to 8 months, repeated emails. And it was after that that NSE deigned to respond. Similarly, when this whole issue was brought out by a whistleblower, again, SEBI sent 6 emails to NSE over a period of about 12 months. And the same email went again and again. And finally, NSE responded after 1.5 years. Now, what does this show? There are 2 questions here I have for you. One is SEBI proving equal to the task of policing the stock market and the important institutions that form part of the stock market? And the second is, are the institutions so disrespectful of SEBI because they know that SEBI will not bite? Has SEBI undermined itself through its actions in the past such that it is not feared by these market intermediaries?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. And I would say, first of all, my respect to Mr. Damodaran. And he has demonstrated that he is my senior in SEBI because he has used a very sophisticated word, flower-based directors, whereas I call them item song directors, because these are the people who are there to attract the crowd to the thing. Now, coming back to the, I will answer your question, but I will touch upon few basic issues. That calling this as a Himalayan scam, there are 2 points here. Either we do not know how mighty is the Himalaya, or no one is aware what is the size of the scam. The second thing is whether it is a scam at all. Forget about co-location. We are not discussing co-location. It is regarding this order that Mr. Barua has passed, where it is related to the governance failure. And I would say there is no doubt in mind of any rational person that it is a governance failure, period. And the person who is responsible for the governance failure, or the person who are responsible for the governance failure, must be put to the task, period. Now, coming to the question that you have asked, I would say that it depends upon what is the seriousness of issue. Now, when the mails were sent by SEBI, I do not know because I have not read the 190-page order, but I am presuming these mails were sent when Chitra was in the helm of the affairs, and mails were not. So you can imagine if a person is so arrogant or so dominant or so confident of herself that she doesn't take the board into confidence, she does everything that is there, then if she is not responding to emails of the SEBI, is, I think, no big deal. But then consequence of that, her not responding, has been faced by her. So I would say that let us not say, see, it is very easy for us to say this person did not do that, this person not. But let us see, in retrospect, everybody is Einstein. I can also discover relativity theory now. But way back, I would not have discovered. But again, the thing is very clear. In our country, we have a very typical culture. We are in the awe of the people. If you are very important, I will be very shy of asking question to you because I feel that I may be fool or I may be insulting you. That is the culture in the board also. In the board, people do not ask question because of the 2 reasons. One, either they will be exposed or they are insulting the person. And as Mr. Damodaran has brought out very clearly many things, he said that there is a failure of the regulatory officer or compliance officer in SEBI, that why it was not done. My counter argument will be that in our country, there are 4,000 and odd listed company, and every company has a compliance officer. How many board members or how many compliance officers in last 10 or 20 years have written anything to SEBI or anything? except the two companies, Yes Bank and PTC Financial Services, where the independent directors have resigned. No independent director has ever talked about governance. Do we assume that the governance in all 4,000 companies is good? The answer is certainly no. The problem is that we have a situation where I am not appointed on a board because I am capable. I'm appointed on the board because I am so and so, either so and so son or so and so, so and so. The problem is we need people who have time, who have understanding. Just because I am Jain Gupta running proxy advisory company doesn't mean that I am competent to become a board member. It is not. So the problem is, rather than looking for this thing, then other thing I would say that I have been very much disturbed over a period of last 10 days, hearing what is being said and what is said. Let us first understand NSE, BSE, or for that member, any exchange in India are world class. I was member of IOSCO in 2009 to 2011, and I told very clearly in the meeting, and people had to agree that the systems we have are better than NYSE or any stock exchange. Our margin system, our risk management system, our trading system is better. We are an online risk management system, whereas NYSE till 10 years back, I don't know today, it was a 24-hour delay. The second thing, institutions and individuals are different. SEBI is an institution. If, say, for example, I was the executive director in SEBI, I was bad. That doesn't make SEBI or its 800 employees bad. NSE is a national institution. It is a great institution. Let us ask question. Has trading system of NSE been compromised? Margin system compromised? Risk management compromised? Nothing. It has had settlement all throughout last 12 years without any problem. The problem is we got to look in organization like a chariot. A chariot is a passive. It doesn't move on its own. It needs a horse. It needs a horseman. In a simile, the horse is the managing director or the management. The horseman is the board. Now, if the horseman and horse both are not functioning, why you blame chariot? So today, the old horseman and horse both have bolted. Now you have got new horse or new horseman. Let us look at the chariot today. The other important aspect, that when this thing happened, what was SEBI issue? Should it take corrective action or should it pass the order? So the corrective action was taken as soon as possible. Chitra was removed and other people were taken care. Board was changed, and NSE, I don't know what happened, but as NSE would have taken all the measures that were required to improve the governance. The second thing I would say, whatever system you may design, whatever expertise you may have, but a system's integrity will be sum total of the integrity of the person manning the system. So if you have the best system designed by the God also, but if I am the pujari in a temple who is a thief, there will be theft in the temple. So you can't stop it. So you can minimize it by supervision and something. And there have been instances where all possible things have happened. But I would again say, I'm not here to give clean chit to NSE, SEBI or anybody. But I'm telling you, let us not paint everything black. Indian stock exchanges are, in my opinion, probably the best in the world. It's a great institution. Let us not malign the institution. Let us malign the people who are responsible.
That's taken very well, Mr. Gupta. Indian stock exchanges and Indian stock markets are up there. But my point is, do we have a regulator who is doing his policing job well enough? You're saying that corrective action was taken. But I want to ask you one question. In this order that Mr. Barua has put out, there is a part which says that the laptops of Chitra Ramakrishna and Anand Subramaniam were disposed of by the NSE as e-waste. Now, this is nothing but destruction of evidence. It's a culpable offense under the Criminal Procedure Code, as you know. So how has SEBI accepted this? SEBI should have lodged a complaint and proceeded on this further. So this is the nitty-gritties, but the larger question I want to know, is SEBI a watchdog that neither barks nor bites?
I think you got to ask the question to the person who have been bitten by SEBI, not by me or anybody else, because there are hundreds of people who have been very well bitten by SEBI. But I would say the problem is you got to, Raghu, I will give you a very simple example. In this country, in my opinion, the biggest problem is our judicial system. And I will give you a very simple example. Recently, there was a case of PNB Housing Finance where the issue was that whether articles of association are important or not. The two retired High Court judges could not come to the conclusion whether they are important or not. On the face of it, when they had Supreme Court order which said that articles of association are bedrock of company management. So if they cannot do, then SEBI people are also human beings. They are not God.
Okay, I shall leave this here. I'll come back to you with further questions on the subject. I'll now move to Lokeshwari, who, as I said, has written extensively on the co-location scam. The question I have for you, Loki, is: was this entire Himalayan, saga of having a consultant who's an outsider, who's amorphous, who has no existence, and acting on his advice and appointing a favored person who had no experience in the stock markets as the COO, was this the stage being set for what followed later? This is the colo scam, as we all know. If you look at the timeline, Anand Subramaniam was appointed on April 1, 2013, and Ms. Sitra Ramakrishna assumed charge as MD and CEO on March 31st, 2013. And the colo scam happened subsequently within the next 2-3 years. And the whistleblower came out with it in 2015. So do you see a link between this and the colo scam? The reason why I'm asking you this question is because a lot of people have been asking me, yes, she passed on secrets of the company outside. Yes, she appointed a favored person as a CEO, but as a COO. But was there any financial loss? Did anybody make any irregular gains from this? Now, will the co-location scam answer that question?
Actually, if you look at the SEBI's recent order, so there is no mention of the correspondence between Chitra Ramakrishna and about the co-location scam or the brokers. Hello, am I back?
Yeah.
I think the connection is not too good. Yeah, if we look at the recent order of SEBI, there is no mention of anything about the co-location scam or the brokers being compromised and so on. So we really cannot say that there is any direct link between the appointment of Anand Subramaniam and the co-location scam as such. But there are a couple of things that kind of throw in a kind of a connection between the two. One is that in April 1, 2013, Anand Subramaniam was appointed as the Chief Strategy Advisor. Okay, so the co-location facilities were started in 2009 by NSE after a circular. And once that started, the whole strategy of the exchange was towards promoting the colo facilities, and almost 40 to 50% of the turnover on the exchange shifted to the colo facilities. Because from 2009 onwards, the algos and the high frequency trading and so on took over the entire stock exchange. So right on the cash market, as well as the derivative, almost half of it or more than half of it shifted to algo trading and also the colo. So as a chief strategic advisor, Anand Subramaniam would have been tasked with or he would have taken on the responsibility of driving the turnover of the exchange through the colo. So it may have come under him, indirectly we can say that. And also in 2015, he was appointed as a group operating officer, in which even the CTOs and the head of the IT, etc., reported directly to him. So there could be a connection in which he was kind of driving the business at the colo and the algos and so on. So maybe there was some kind of a connection and he was brought in. I don't know. These are all tenuous. We don't really know the actual connection, but the timing when he came in, and then of course we came across the first colo in between 2012 and 2014. when it was found that constantly being first to drop server of NSE to be first in the queue and to get all the tick by tick data first. So this was the first colo scam that the SEBI order of 2019 spoke about, which was revealed by the whistleblower. This started before Anand Subramaniam.
We lost you.
Loki, we lost you. We can't hear you. Okay, I'll go on as Lokeshwari tries to reconnect. I'll go on to Palak Shah. Palak is the reporter who broke the story.
Don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, Loki, you're back. Is your connection okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So
where did I drop off?
When you're talking about how direct market access was started in 2009 and there was co-location happening even before Anand Subramaniam joined NSE.
Okay. So the first colo scam that the SEBI order of 2019 spoke about was OPG Securities, which logged into the secondary server of NSE consistently between 2012 and 2014, so that they were first in the queue and they could get all the tick by tick data first, so that they could execute their algo programs first. So this scam began before Anand Subramaniam assumed office and went on to the middle of his tenure. And the second colo scam was the laying of the dark fiber between NSE's colo facility and BSE's colo facility. This actually helped two brokers, Ways to Wealth and GKN Securities. And the funny thing was, it was done by one Sampark who was not even on the empaneled list of service providers of NSE. So these were the two main issues in the colo scam. And Anand Subramaniam, as the Chief Strategic Advisor from 2013 and as the Group Operating Officer from 2015, he would have been at the helm of affairs, overseeing the colo and the other facilities when all these happened. And I was making the point that from 2009, 2010 onwards, almost 40 to 50% of turnover on the exchanges shifted to these algo tradings and direct market access and colos and so on. So there was an exponential increase in turnover from 2009 and 10 onwards in the derivative segment of NSE. And we can say that most of it was driven because the colos facility started functioning from 2010 onwards. And Anand Subramaniam, since he was the strategic advisor and the group operating officer, and he had all the IT heads, etc., reporting to him, he would have been, responsible for driving the exchanges turnover and exchanges business, and which in turn meant that he would have been driving the colo facilities also. So yeah, there is some kind of a link between the two, but we don't really have any direct inclination towards that based on the SEBI order and so on.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that there is a circumstantial evidence, but you can't connect the two and say categorically that this was a stage being set up for the colo scam, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So I'll now move on to Palak Shah. Palak broke the story for us on the 12th of this month, and he has been following it up quite closely after that. So Palak, my question for you is, what do you think about this Himalayan yogi? Is he a guesswork, or is he someone who really is there, or is it an alibi for someone who's walking the corridors of power in Delhi or Bombay or anywhere else?
Thank you, sir. There are two aspects to this. One is the Himalayan yogi, and the other is to take this story forward from whether SEBI has been able to bite or no, SEBI has done its policing or no. So I'll take the another aspect first, which is to take the story forward, and I will start with the Mirza Ghalib शेर. बेखुदी बेसबब नहीं गालिब, कुछ तो है जिसकी पर्दादानी है. This cover up, as Ghalib would call pardadari, has been going on for 7 years since the colocation scam was exposed by a whistleblower in January 2015. Board of the NSE is responsible for this cover-up of a massive scale, and they should be held accountable. Why we are saying the board of NSE is responsible? We will reveal this shortly in our stories in BusinessLine, but for the viewers, it is suffice to say that the board knew each and every aspect of the colocation scam, illegal appointment of Anand Subramaniam, and the gross mismanagement of Chitra Ramakrishna. They not only remained quiet, but let Chitra resign with dignity and put rupees 50 crore in her kitty. Apart from the board of NSE, why should we say that SEBI has been indulging in a cover-up? We don't have to go too far for this. The recent order of SEBI tries to hide more than it reveals. The most important things to note is that SEBI has been sitting on tons of emails of Chitra and others in NSE for several years now. And it has revealed only a few of them. The order says Chitra was, I'll give you an instance. The order says Chitra was caught red-handed in passing confidential information to an unidentified person who she calls a yogi. Is SEBI and NSE, if SEBI and NSE's board did not know many such emails, if SEBI and NSE board did know of many such emails for months and years, which have come out in forensic audit, in SEBI's own audit, why did they not alert the government or investigative agencies about it? Because CBI has been investigating the colo scam since 2018. All SEBI has done is cover up of these emails which are coming out after 7 years or 6 years maybe after knowing they existed. Even a junior lawyer with some knowledge of SEBI laws can tell you that Chitra's statements, as ludicrous and amusing they may sound, actually call for criminal investigation into the entire matter. For NSE, as Mr. Damodaran pointed out, is a systemically important institution from the point of view of India's economy. Still, SEBI has not charged Chitra with fraud and other stringent securities laws that call for a probe from an anti-money laundering agency too. SEBI says that Chitra has not, if SEBI says that Chitra has not played a fraud with the entire country and the sentiments of India's retail investors, then it should allow each and every MD and CEO of a listed company to pass all sensitive information to a yogi like this. It reeks of a criminal conspiracy to the core, and Chitra's yogi revelations and the colocation scams, I say, are the two sides of the same coin. By the way, I will tell you why they are the two sides of the same coin, because this is not the first time that Chitra was sharing confidential information of NSE with an outsider. When Chitra and Ravi Naren were at the helm, they shared confidential trading data with Ajay Shah and Suzanne Thomas, who used it for algo trading. This is all mentioned in SEBI's colocation orders. This was done without any agreement. Nobody knew that such sensitive and confidential data is being shared with Ajay Shah and Suzanne Thomas. When SEBI called them for questioning, both Suzanne Thomas and Ajay Shah told them there was an agreement. Even NSE said there was an agreement. Do you know SEBI orders and investigation reports mention that the agreement had no date, no sign, no notary, no stamp, nothing. So it clearly shows no agreement existed. So this is a massive cover-up operation, done even by SEBI as well as the NSE board. Now I come to the point of yogi. Who is this yogi, you asked me, and everybody has been asking, who is this yogi? I am telling you, we don't have to answer that. Chitra is going to say that. Trust me. When she is arrested, interrogated, she is going to answer who is the yogi. And I will tell you one more thing. It is not that the yogi doesn't exist. The yogi knows who has to be cajoled in the PMO's office, who has to be spoken about, who has to be influenced in the finance ministry, who are the people, who should be given portfolio in NSE, key portfolios in NSE. The yogi is guiding Chitra to give certain departments to one Suprabhat Lala. Suprabhat Lala is a key accused in colocation scam. He is a brother-in-law of Suzanne Thomas and, Ajay Shah. So I think all these things are two sides of the same coin, this yogi business and this co-location scam. So there is a cover up and the yogi does exist, which has to be found out.
Great. So I think we all need spiritual powers to uncover this yogi. It's not going to be such an easy task. But leaving that aside, I come back to Mr. Damodaran. On the corporate governance at NSE, you started off saying that we should put in place systems to ensure that does not happen in future. And you said we have to learn from these failures. And now we had the best of corporate governance systems in the NSE. You had public interest directors, 4 of them, or 5 of them, if I'm right. And you had persons of eminence, and you call them, flower vases. That's another matter. But for the outside world, they were persons of eminence. And we had, NSE governed by the SEBI's rules and regulations, the Companies Act, so far as conduct of board meetings are concerned. Despite all this, we are not talking about a scam that has happened. So what further measures do you think can be put to ensure that these things don't recur? And what are the key learnings that we can take away from this?
The first key learning, according to me, is that you can't have the same 2 persons for 25 years in positions of responsibility in such an important institution. Over time, the concentration of power happens. Whether they do it from day one or they discover that it is possible to concentrate power, it certainly happens. Number 2, I believe that you should not have the immediate predecessor of the CEO as a member of the board as soon as he or she steps off from the CEO's position. One of 2 things can happen. In some cases, they prevent the CEO from doing what he or she should do because they were there till the other day. They have their own understanding of how that responsibility is to be fulfilled. But here you have a situation where 2 people that have together run the exchange for 2.5 decades are, in positions of responsibility, one within the board and the other running the management, the head of the management. I was looking at the composition of some of the committees. The NRC of SEC has the vice chairman as one of its members. Ordinarily, it shouldn't be a problem. But if that is a person who's been in a managerial position for several years, even assume that this matter went to the NRC, what would have prevented that person from saying, look, we have given all these powers to the CEO, and if she's exercised it, why are we second-guessing her judgment on this? It's entirely possible that somebody who was acting in concert, present in the NRC, could prevent a worthwhile discussion. I'm only speculating on the possibility. I do not know what transpired in the NRC. So you need to think in terms of people with finite terms and bring in place new people. You can't have an institution of this kind with 25 years, same leadership. Maybe persons are changed. You certainly can't have that. The second, when I talk in terms of systems and structures, I am not looking at creating a few committees, creating a few posts, appointing a few people. Has anybody ever evaluated what these persons were up to? Now, you have a company secretary who I imagine attends board meetings because that is one of the jobs of a company secretary. And it's also the job of the company secretary to guide the board on what it can do and what it cannot do. So when board members, one or more of them say, look, what we discussed is far too confidential to be recorded in the minutes, it is for the company secretary to say, you don't have a choice in the matter. The board minutes should capture all important matters that were discussed. This is not an informal meeting of the board. We're talking in terms of a formal meeting. So you can have boards, you can have committees. Unless these function properly, nothing will happen. Did NSE have a proper system of evaluation of the board and its committees? You can't get away by saying it's not a listed entity and listed entities do this. You're much larger than several hundred listed entities put together. And if you have tasked them to do this, this is a good governance point, and you are going in for an IPO or trying to go in for an IPO at the last count. Should you not have ensured that your boards and committees that you put in place actually acted? After people have been found guilty in SEBI's earlier order of the Colo scam, are they continuing in the same positions? The same people? Clearly, that is a governance failure that can be addressed. So it's not just about, creating a good, a board that has the right arithmetic, X number of management people, X number of independents. That doesn't make it a good board. That only ticks the arithmetic box of the board, not the value box that the board needs. And I think I had one question, and maybe Palak Shah can cast light on this, or Mr. Jain Gupta can cast light on this. There was a whistleblower mail that went to SEBI, on the basis of which SEBI asked some questions. Is there a whistleblower mechanism in the NSE which adequately safeguards the identity of the complainant? And if so, was any whistleblower complaint sent to the right people in SEBI, the chair of the audit committee, for example? Because if you find management is not doing enough, you have under the Act the right to write to the chair of the audit committee. I don't know the answer, but it might be worth asking whether the whistleblower had confidence to write to SEBI, but perhaps did not have the confidence to write to the right people within the company. I think there are lots of questions that need to be asked and answers need to be found. The short point is, what needs to be done next is to figure out how do you restore the credibility. It has taken a beating, clearly. Because you might say, all of this happened up to 2016. After that, you have a new managing director, you have new directors on the board. The man in the street is reading articles in the newspapers, news items saying NSE has got some big scam going on, the CEO is involved. They might not know there is a new CEO who is in position for 3 years, that there is a new chair of the board who is in position. They might not know any of that. So a lot of communication to the stakeholders, a lot of coming out and saying, yes, we did trip up, but we are fixing it, or we have fixed it, or we continue to work on this. If that communication doesn't exist, there will be all kinds of conspiracy theories afloat. I don't think, creative people will sit back quietly. They will create conspiracy theories. Then you will get completely what I call weapons of mass distraction. You will get everybody looking in directions which they don't need to look at. The issues are fairly clear. Things have gone wrong in the exchange. Find out what went wrong. Why did it go wrong? Who was responsible for its going wrong? Of course, there is a punitive angle you need to address. And what needs to be done now? Because this institution cannot go to seed. It's not just another institution. It's far too important to be allowed to fail. And fail not in an economic sense. Fail in the eyes of those who believe that this is where we are seeing systemic integrity that protects our wealth, brings us to the markets. And this has to be done immediately because, as we have seen, there are lots of people coming to the Indian markets. Retail investors have increased, mutual funds are seeing more folios being created. This is the time to build that confidence. There are no magic wands that you can build. Therefore, do what you need to do and communicate. That, I think, is important.
Thank you. That's very clear. Can't get clearer than that. Mr. Gupta, I want to come back to SEBI with you again. Do you think, going by what has happened, not in just this case, but several instances in the past, do you think we need a separate cadre of professionals to man SEBI? I know we had an exceptional IAS officer, Mr. M. Damodar, who helped SEBI.
No,
But
leave me
is
out.
it a good idea to have bureaucrats?
May I come in briefly before Mr. Gupta comes in?
Yeah.
Especially since you raised mine. I had suggested to the government many, many years ago. You know, I left SEBI 14 years and a few days ago. And it was 17 years ago that I joined SEBI. After looking at the complexity of some of the issues, I suggested that it might be a good idea to get experts from the area of accountancy, law, etc., who will not accept your full-time jobs because they're doing very well outside. They're not looking for jobs. Bring them on contract basis, create a separate organization so that you don't have inter-se seniority issues. Somebody's been there for 10 years, you're bringing someone and placing him or above that. None of that. Create an organization with persons on contract brought in to address specific issues. If there is some complex issue that needs to be done, bring a few lawyers, bring a few accountants, compensate them well, fix that problem, tell them thank you very much, now you can go. They will not serve you on a career basis full time. There are several other things that I suggested, which were all turned down in 30 seconds flat, so I don't want to take more of your time. Sorry, Mr. Gupta, for cutting into you.
Raghu, to answer your questions, I do not ever believe in any specialist cadre or specialization, because all throughout my life, I have done everything else except what I have studied. And in my present organization, I have trained people to do things which they would have never dreamed to do. Similarly, what happens when you have people who are put into the compartments, then the organization becomes very difficult to manage, and especially organization like SEBI, where you can't have a person for, as Mr. Damodaran says, that 20 years, the combination of CEO and deputy CEO should not happen. But if you have a specialist, then you are bound to have that combination in SEBI for all time to come. That is one point. The second point is this: while Mr. Damodaran's idea is good, but then what happened, it doesn't work in practical sense, because the person who is there, he will have no accountability, he will have no belongingness. He may do a wonderful job or he may do a shoddy job, but you do not know. But ultimately, the flag will come to SEBI. The idea was to have a specialist committee. If you remember, India was the first jurisdiction to have a technical advisory committee in SEBI after the CFTC USA did. And this was done by me, because when I was interacting with exchanges, they used to talk in the language which I don't understand, and I will take time to understand. So I said, let us have an independent committee who will guide SEBI. So the co-location scam was discovered or handled by the technical advisory committee. The other thing is this: I agree 100% with Mr. Damodaran that at this juncture, it is the duty of NSE to come and say, look, this is past, this is the present, how we have moved from the past and present. Again, the present also cannot be 100% guaranteed that it will be not failing. The corporate governance is an issue which is ever evolving. Today you make a law, tomorrow there could be a change. And I will give a very simple example. Just 1 week back, everybody was very happy that SEBI has done away with the chairman and executive director separation. Now you are saying that it is how dangerous it is when chairman and executive director are combined, because the horse and the horseman are the same. That is that. Other thing is this: the integrity of a person can never be legislated. You may write volumes and volumes of the book. You can't make me a person of integrity. You can instill fear in me, but you will never make me a person of integrity. Integrity is something which comes from the system, something from this. So the problem will always remain. As long as human beings are there manning a position, you will always run the risk of failure. It is for the systems to keep a check and balance. And I would say that as I got the board, don't appoint the people who are high-fi, who do not have time. Appoint the people who can devote time and who are really willing to take risk. Today, how many people are ready to write a letter or something to SEBI and say, my CEO is doing this or my MD is doing this, because they're afraid. And mind you, the problem is that the person will not lose the job from that place. But the once he is known that he has been a whistleblower, none of the 10,000 companies in India is going to employ him. The problem is that. And secondly, whistleblower concept is very misused and badly used. Recall 4 years back, how many whistleblower complaints were there in Infosys? How many? So the problem is that it's a two-way sword. You do not know which is going to cut what.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Mr. Gupta. So I'll pick up on what you said and go on to Lokeshwari. Mr. Gupta said NSE should say that was then and this is now. We have moved on. We have put in place new systems. Mr. Damodaran said earlier that a lot of the people who are involved in this are still around lurking in the system. So if you put the two together, when NSE says that was then and this is now, would you believe them? Would you believe them if these people continue to lurk in the system?
As far as the colo scam is concerned, I think they addressed the problems that were there that caused the initial problem with the OPD security logging, because in 2014 they changed the entire logging protocol itself. So the technological part of it they did address in 2014 itself, so that it couldn't be scammed anymore. And yeah, there was a change at the helm with Mr. Vikram Demai coming in 2016. So the main leadership at NSE has changed, and they are saying that they have brought in processes and checks and so on. But I think that, yeah, we should have clearer definition of what is the responsibility of all the roles of the management. And there should be checks and regular follow-ups. And if there are slip-ups, I think there should be penalties, severe penalties that should be deterrent to any such future misdoings. And the problem is SEBI may put out an order and then it's appealed in SAT, and then SAT will give a stay, and then we never hear back from them. You know, that's what happened with the colo order in 2019. We still don't know what the SAT has come back and said. So I think I'd like Mr. J.N. Gupta to tell us, you know, what is the, or Mrs. Daman to tell us what is the way out in this, you know, because this will just get into one long legal wrangle and there's no end, you know. So the people who do wrong just get away in our system, right?
That's true.
Raghu, I just want to come in. I would say the first thing SEBI should do, close the route of public interest director to be appointed by SEBI. That is a very dangerous thing. What happens is this: I am appointed by SEBI. Then tomorrow something is wrong, then SEBI is accused because I am appointed by SEBI. Let SEBI be away from this appointment business. Let the director be appointed through a transparent process. Even if you want to advertisement, interview, do something. But let SEBI be not party to this, because then today you say that 50% of the board is appointed by SEBI, so SEBI is equally responsible. So that should be done. The second thing is, I say...
But Mr. Gupta, SEBI is the regulator. If PIDs were to be appointed with the company, that would be even worse, isn't it? Even if they come through a transparent process.
I am saying do away with the concept of PID being appointed by, let PID be appointed by Hindu or by Economic Times, I don't care. But let it not be appointed by SEBI.
Who do you think then can do that?
Let there be a transparent process of you have a third party interview system and appoint people. Don't involve SEBI into the process. That is, if I have my say, I will say the first thing is there, because today what is happening, there is again, it's like that CEO and executive director, the SEBI is appointee and SEBI the appointees are there in the board. So you say the board of NSE or BSE is half controlled by SEBI. I don't like this comparison.
Okay, you're coming to a second point when I interrupted you, Mr. Gupta.
Yeah, the second point, I just missed that. I think it was that what more is to be done or what NSE has done. And I think they got to very clear that there is no room for conflict. And I would say again, I will go back to 10 years back. When we had written the report on stock exchanges, we said very clearly these should be not-for-profit institutions because they are like a semi-regulator, and a regulator cannot be a profit-making institution. Tomorrow, if SEBI becomes a profit-making institution and more order you write, more bonus you get, it will be a catastrophe. So what say the stock exchanges or those agencies which are quasi-regulatory agency should not be. But at the time, entire press was against us that you people have made a report, you don't want the stock exchange to be profit-making. But we had a reason to do that.
Yeah, probably there's a point in that, having an exchange as a profit-making body. You're right. So there are lots of readers' questions, and we have a big attendance right now. So almost I have more than 90 questions from readers. But before we go to that, I'll pick up the best of them, 2-3 of them, because we are running out of time. Before we go to that, one last question to Palak. Palak, would you want to share with us how you chanced upon the story, or how did you break the story? Very quickly.
Oh, the yogi story?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know. I would have, lost my job, or you would have given me, a very bad rating, in my appraisals which are coming. So because I slept at night, the order had come late, and when I woke up in the morning, my WhatsApp messages were full with the order. So anything to do with co-location and Chitra has always interested me. And, I try to go to the core, try to call up people. So when I saw this order, I started reading. After reading 50, 60 pages, which were all boring, there was nothing there. I tumbled upon something called, a very, on the email provided by the yogi. So that actually took me forward. I said, whom is Chitra trying to pass these messages with, and why has SEBI buried all these things inside? This is such a sensitive information that, Chitra is passing all this confidential data to a yogi who is unknown, she claims. So that's how I tumbled upon this. And, I started writing. I did not do my breakfast that day. And, I started working at some 6:30, 6:45, and till 11, I was working on this story.
Great.
So one more thing I want to tell you, what Mr. J.N. Gupta said, and I think there is a massive requirement of holding SEBI accountable, because SEBI, all this is happening because SEBI has allowed this to grow into a bubble bigger and bigger. Just one small example, the CRO of National Stock Exchange, who was fined by SEBI, he became such a good expert in corporate governance that SEBI made him the dean of their institution. That is the way SEBI is operating. So this needs a cleanup in SEBI also. SEBI reforms are required.
That one point sums up the answer to the question that I originally posed, Mr. Gupta, about SEBI. So anyway, we'll go on to reader questions now. There is an interesting question from a reader called Arun Sundar. It says, what is the reputational damage for NSE through the scam? And can it be quantified? What will be the impact the scam will have on the markets? And being a systemic scam, will this in any way disturb investor interests? That's something that a lot of people have been asking me. Will this affect foreign portfolio interest in India? Will it affect investments, incoming investments? I'll pose this question both to the distinguished gentlemen, Mr. Damodaran and Mr. Gupta. Mr. Damodaran first.
I don't think it is going to significantly damage the markets. Foreign investors are intelligent enough to understand that there is a new dispensation in the exchange and that several correctives must have been taken. Some of them would have actually tried and figured out what is it that NSE has done in order to address the issues that have surfaced. And as far as retail Indian investors are concerned, they seem to be coming to the market in large numbers. I don't think that will happen, but we have to signal to a much larger audience. You think the rest of the world is very happy that this is the largest in terms of derivatives, this exchange? They're not happy. They would like body blows to be administered to such institutions that threaten their once famous leadership in these areas. And therefore, we need to address the reputational damage. That there is clearly some reputational damage. I don't think that is going to go away. But to the extent possible, you need to fix it very, very quickly. There's no escape. As for SEBI, I think as an organization, it needs to ask itself, does it have the right number of people, the right kind of people who can look at three areas: surveillance, investigation, and enforcement. These are the three areas where you play policeman. SEBI is not a unidimensional institution that only plays policeman. It has to develop the market, it has to protect the interests of the investors, and yes, regulate the market is also one of the things that SEBI has to do. Therefore, SEBI must arm itself with enough people with the right kind of experience and background to be on top of the job. Let me give you an example. When I was in SEBI, I asked an innocent question to someone. That's all these reports get filed with us, companies, quarterly statements, half-yearly, annual, etc. Who looks at it within SEBI and what does SEBI do? And then I was told, I can see Mr. Gupta laughing, and then I was told that we have 4 chartered accountants, 2 of whom are otherwise engaged, and the other 2 characters are to look at this. Now, clearly realized there was a problem. You look at, see, what is regulation? Regulation is a function of law and accounting. These are the 2 skills that you need. I went to the premier law schools and recruited a large number of extremely good lawyers. Unfortunately, many of them, if not all of them, have left since I left several years ago. I think you need to bring in people. You don't need, they will not serve SEBI for 30 years, 35 years. Forget it. There are several opportunities that they have outside. Can they come and serve you for 5 years, 7 years, and then go out? It doesn't matter. You can always get new people coming in. As somebody said famously long ago, that there are always more fish in the sea than ever come out of it. There will be newer people. Some will go, new people will come along. But you need to have a system that is dynamic enough to attract young people, qualified people, who will come and provide the kind of energy levels that an organization needs. One of the things that organizations need is not just expertise, it needs energy also. If the energy in an organization is sapped, it doesn't matter what expertise resides in that organization, it will be only of academic.
Yeah, Mr. Gupta?
Yeah, I would say Mr. Damodharan had hit the nail on the head, because I asked this question not only to SEBI but to MCA also. And I said that you have got so many lakhs of companies, they keep on filing the data with you. What are you doing with the data? And the answer is nobody is looking at the data. So I said to them that ask companies to file only that data which is confidential with MCA, and ensure that all other data is filed by the companies on their own website so that it will be under public scrutiny. Today, all the companies are filing the data with MCA. There is no public scrutiny, nor the MCA scrutiny. So same thing has to happen. So SEBI has mandated all stock exchange data, all quarterly statement, all the investor presentation. But the problem is that even investors do not look at the data. They look at report by ABC brokerage, buy or sell. They don't even go to the numbers. And I can tell you a very simple thing. We discovered 6 years back that a nursery school had 50% plus debtors. Now, I went to school, Damodharan Sahab went to school, everybody, we paid fees in the advance. So how come there could be debtors in a nursery school? That means there is a fraud. Now that company had issued a preferential offer at 600 rupees. Now that company is trading at 10 rupees now after our report. But the issue is nobody looks at the data. Nobody has time. I want to see that if the share is going up, let me also be part of that journey. I do not know whether it is Jain Gupta pumping up that share or Raghu pumping that share, whether it is a gold mine or there is a coal mine there, nobody knows. So the problem is that one person will not make the governance good. It is all the stakeholders will have to come in together. And the mutual funds are voting, insurance companies are voting, but because of the promoter's share, I was just looking at one of the results today, voting results, in one of the famous pharma company, 80% of institutional investors have voted against, 90% of retail investors have voted against, but the resolution has passed because promoter has 50% plus voting. So the issue is that you got to settle the governance problem, not bit by bit, not patch by patch. And unless until everybody is part of the system and working toward the system, nothing is going to happen. And other thing I would say that we are critical of SEBI order that this is there. And I would say a order or any investigation has to be with the precision of a surgeon. You got to concentrate on what is relevant. If you keep on doing everything else instead of operating the heart, you may go up to the liver. So don't do that. Concentrate on what you're operating.
Excellent. On that note, I think I'll have to wind up, though this discussion is really engaging and engrossing, and our esteemed panelists have very good points to make. But I think we have shot past our time by over 15 minutes right now. There are 120 questions in my inbox at this point in time. Physically impossible to answer every one of them, but some of these questions have been answered during the course of this discussion, as I can see. Yes, Mr. Gupta.
Yeah, if you can mail those questions, at least I can send the answer to those questions.
That's very kind of you. We will certainly do that. And I should warn you that most of these questions are comments, and they are some of them are. There's one particular question where this reader is wailing, saying, "When will India see nil scams? We're all tired seeing scams after scams involving public money. All our money paid as taxes are swindled by few by subverting internal control weaknesses," and so on. So some of these will be observations, but we shall certainly mail you some of these questions. And thank you. That's very kind of you to offer that. So I think we'll wind up here right now. And my two bit is, I think what both Mr. Gupta and Mr. Damodaran say is that this has happened, take note of it and move forward. Ensure that these things don't happen. Make sure that we put in place systems and we learn from that. But to that, I would add, before we can learn from this, before we can understand how to put in place better systems, we need to understand and get to the bottom of this whole thing. How this happened, how were systems subverted, how was it possible for one person to override everything that the system put in place, and how did she become so powerful? These are questions that we need to ponder upon, and possibly we'll also need a lot of spiritual help in this. Possibly the Himalayan yogi can help us get to the bottom of the scandal. Thank you once again, and thank you for bearing with us all this while, readers. Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you, Raghu, and sorry if I have been very brash, but that is what I am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gupta. That's exactly why we invited you. We want you to be yourself. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Damodaran, Mr. Gupta, Palak, and Lokeshwari.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.